Hello, Steve White, Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, there's some drama about Star Trek at the moment in regards to religion, and Jessie did a video on it, which I had to address because it was pretty much ridiculous and offensive, and as a Star Trek fan. Now, the first issue, there's two issues. The second one is actually the main topic of religion, but the first one is what Star Trek is and the creation of Star Trek. Jessie Gender is one of these activists who sees Star Trek as about diversity and representation. Star Trek was never about diversity and representation. It was just something that was part of Star Trek. Star Trek was about, it's a science fiction show, it was about where science will take us in the future. And where one of the places it's going to take us is, we're going to have, diversity and representation. We're not going to have discrimination. And that's just something that was just there. It was just a byproduct. It was just something that was in the future. It wasn't what it was about. But because some limited people couldn't really conceive what Star Trek was and what that future was, they just focused on that element that they liked, they related to, and said, oh, that's inclusive. It makes me feel good. So I like that. That's what Star Trek's about. And unfortunately, the people who are making Star Trek now, who don't understand science fiction, don't know what Star Trek is, they latched onto that. And now they've made Star Trek all about diversity and representation, when it was just something that should have just been sort of organically in it. And that makes it really easy for conservative people to attack Star Trek now, because it's all it's about. It's got no other redeeming qualities or no other elements. It's just about representation and diversity. And it's just very easy now to criticise and take down, because that's all it is, and it's very shallow. And it dates Star Trek. It makes it it breaks the fourth wall. It just destroys any, when all you're doing is making the show relatable to today and making it about people and today's issues, it just destroys any notion of it being a better future where things have changed or improved. So they've just ruined Star Trek. And the main issue I have with her is she hates Star Trek, and like what Star Trek is. She has her version of Star Trek, which is her like queer theory reading of Star Trek, where she thinks that it is what she believes it is. She really hates that there's this show that in her mind is all about diversity and representation was created by a cis white male. So she's constantly trying to undermine Gene Roddenberry creating Star Trek. And she's not the only person. There are people that are trying to say that Lucille Ball created Star Trek because her production company produced it, her studio produced it. But she didn't even know what it was. She didn't understand it. And she greenlit it before she even knew what it was. Once she saw what it was, she liked it and she fought for it, even though it wasn't financially viable for her studio. And we love her for that. But that's what she did. She didn't create it. And she just tries to undermine him in every way. Like in this video, she accidentally refers to him as the creator of Star Trek, and then she corrects herself and says, or at least in some part had a large hand in developing what Star Trek became. I wanted to punch the screen. That made me so angry. That is in no way the truth. The idea that he was just part of the team that developed the show. No, he created Star Trek, and then he was the guy who hired the people who worked on it and helped develop it for him. But he's responsible for everything they did and everything they created because he hired them to create that. So he's the creator of Star Trek. That's it. And I'm so sick of people trying to diminish him, reduce his role, and try and give credit to other people like Lucille Ball, who didn't create Star Trek. So that's my first issue with Jessie Gender and her hatred of Star Trek and her misreading of Star Trek and her misrepresentation of Star Trek. And now we get to religion. It's really simple. There is no religion in Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek with no religion, because science basically eradicated science and knowledge eradicated religion, because religion only exists out of ignorance and fear, and it just wouldn't exist in that future. Maybe in some pockets, some isolationist areas of Earth would still have religion, but the rest of the Earth moved on with science and other alien races, and religion just can't exist in a world with alien gods and alien races and alien planets, because just religion only really works if you're ignorant enough to believe what they're telling you about humanity and everything. So in an advanced future, it just can't exist. So there would be no person on any Starfleet ship in a hijab. It just wouldn't happen. Now you may point out that, like she did, that they had a wedding in Balance of Terror, but that wasn't religious. It's a leftover from religion, but it wasn't religious. That's just people still wanting to be couples. So that doesn't undermine that. So yeah. So basically, no, there is no religion in Star Trek because that's how it was created. That's what Gene Roddenberry created. The utopian future doesn't have religion because utopia can't exist with religion because religion is basically war. It's basically divides everyone and creates war, and we couldn't have peace in the future with religion. That's one of the things that science freed us from in Gene's future. So yeah. So her video is ridiculous. She often is ridiculous, which is sad because, okay, you can't say this is homophobia because I'm gay. My issue with her is not that she's trans. I loved her for that initially until I started hearing what she said about Star Trek, and then I realised that she didn't know what Star Trek was. Jessie Gender doesn't know Trek.